Yay.
We've been on Zoom for I don't know how many years, but it seems like with each new iteration of it, there's a new challenge or a new way to do something. So, anyway.
I'll just do a quick intro.
Okay.
Yes.
Here.
So welcome to the crowd. So bienvenidas, bienvenidos, welcome. So just an introduction to our new 2026 series of conversation with. And my name is Alex Aguilar. I'm the current board president of IYCCV. And so I will leave Holger and Holly to start the program. But I just wanted to say welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us, and more coming soon. So enjoy.
And I'm going to leave it to Holger and just try to answer as best I can what he asks.
Yeah, so welcome everyone to our first conversation with, and it's a very popular, well-discussed topic, not only in these days, but I think as long as humans live. So it's about aging. And today we talk about yoga and aging. And this is an IYCCV series, Iyengar Yoga of the Coachella Valley. And we have Holly Hoffmann here today. Holly is a senior Iyengar yoga teacher and the only senior Iyengar yoga teacher here in the Valley. She is running Iyengar Yoga Plum Desert for many years, and this is 17 years. 17 years, yeah. Yes. So a long time around. She's also certified in therapeutics and also with the Yoga Alliance, and has been teaching so many different classes in many different ways. And of course, since that also takes some of the years of her life, or has been taking some of the years of her life. So aging is the topic. So my first question is, well, when does aging actually start?
Well, I think aging probably starts right about the time we're born. We're born, we're new, and then we start aging, right? But I think people really start to think about getting, older when something happens or they lose some sort of mobility. Then they start to consider, maybe something is going on with me physiologically or physically, or, there's some sort of decline in movement. And, that's different for everybody. So when it hits is, I think, different for everybody. Middle age, I don't know if you've experienced this, you're younger than I am, but it feels like mentally you don't age. Like your physical body is there and you're able, to have the capacity to keep using it. Then I don't really think you consider that you're aged. I feel as young in my mind as I did, when I was 30 years old or 35 years old. And I think, Guruji talked about what is the ultimate freedom in life. And if you correlate the ultimate freedom in life to yoga, or to being able to move throughout, your life, or you're out, in your everyday life, I'll say, it's about not having to consider things. Like I can tell when somebody walks into class and everybody's sitting down and they look and they go, because you know what they're calculating, right? They're not calculating sitting down. They're calculating, how am I going to get up? And is she going to be able to help me get up? So I think, ultimate freedom is not considering that, not having to even think about it. You don't consider, I'm going to roll over in bed. Oh, my back, So the ultimate freedom in life is not to have to consider, does my back hurt? Do my knees hurt? Do my shoulders hurt? Can I walk? When your grandkids go, Grammy, let's go for a bike ride, and you can just get on the bike and ride away. There's a freedom in that. There's a freedom in movement in that. There's something that happens in your brain that keeps you young because you're able to move through that. Hopefully that somewhat of a...
So concluding of that, what is the biggest misconception then about aging?
That it's too late to start. Everybody can go, whoa, I wish I would have started this 20 years ago, but life does have a way of catching up, and now's as good a time to start as any.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's ever too late to start moving or to start exercising your brain or stretch your brain or however, we want to say it. I don't think there's a timeline on that.
Mhm.
Even if you're physically unable to move or, to the degree that you used to be able to, there's always something you can do. Mobility can be improved regardless of your situation.
Yeah, so we are starting here a little bit talking about aging in general. Of course, it's about yoga and aging, and that will follow very soon. It's about 60 minutes, roughly. And you have also the occasion to ask questions at the end. So if there's anything coming up, please remember it, and we can talk about it later. So I found, when I looked in the internet about aging, and it says in humans, aging represents the accumulation of changes in a human being over time, and it can encompass physical, psychological, and social changes. For example, reaction time may slow with age, while memories and general knowledge typically increase. So has your perspective on aging changed? I mean, like you might have had your ideas 30 years ago, and now it's different.
Yeah.
So in how far?
Well, the way that I look at my practice changes a little bit. There's certain asanas that I'm more keen to do than others that I used to do when I was, a little bit younger. So it's changed from, my practice has changed for, and I don't want to call it an aggressive practice, but I had a very active, practice, very physical, active practice. And I enjoyed that physicality of it, that movement of it. And I don't enjoy that as much as I used to. Forward bends are now more pleasurable to me, or supported back bends, or, different things. That's not to say that I don't enjoy standing poses, because I think they are, with regard to yoga, they are the baseline. They are what give you the strength and the ability to keep moving.
Mm-hmm. So what I just read, there was also a part of social changes. So when we talk about, or when we look at society where aging is still kind of regarded as something bad, or we don't want to have it happen, although everybody goes in the same direction, and how far do you think society has changed in both ways? So some might see it as, oh, I don't want to age, but others might even appreciate it a little bit more honestly. So what is your observation about society with all the many people and students you encounter?
Well, I think socially people tend to isolate themselves more as they age, especially if there's nobody at home. You get used to not talking to somebody, you get used to not having somebody around, and all of a sudden you find yourself in that scenario where you are alone all the time. So I think something that's important is to get out, be social, and a consideration of that is the physical part of it, right? You want to go out and be social, you have to be able to get up, you have to be able to get dressed, you have to be able to get in your car, you have to be able to go somewhere. And then you have to reverse all that before you get too tired to do it all to get home. So, the consideration is still there. You're still going through that math, like the person that walks into the studio and says, everyone's on the floor, I'm not going to be able to get up off the floor. So then they just decide, well, I can't do that, and I'm not coming back. I'm not going to attempt it again. It was embarrassing, and I'm not doing everything right. And in general, it doesn't matter if you do it right or wrong. Yes, there's methods to do, but just get out, do it. Like Nike said, you've got to do it.
So a question is also, how do you know when you're, for example, tired at some point during the day that is related to aging versus it's just a normal being tired? So when do you really realize, or when have you realized, yeah, there was a change, that is now what I learned is most likely being older?
Well, I guess for me, I've always been kind of a 20-minute napper in the afternoon, so I don't see what's wrong with a nap. I really don't. I mean, you're going to go down for 2-3 hours, then you're going to get into a situation where you struggle at night to sleep, right? That becomes a problem. But what's wrong with just resting your brain for a little bit, shutting the world down? And, when I mentioned that I was attracted to different aspects of yoga, I think that, when you do sort of get, I don't want to say past it, but get to the point where you enjoy peace and quiet and silence, and the meditation of yoga becomes attractive to you, or the pranayama practice becomes attractive to you, why not? You know, you've spent years opening your chest, you've spent years, you know, creating a support in your back body that does support a pranayama practice. Or, you know, why do we practice shavasana every day when we're in yoga? You know, we practice it to learn how to settle our central nervous system and to shut it down to a point where we're, you know, not gone, but that where we learn to relax. You know, we learn to let go a little bit instead of feeling like we're on all the time. I think for me, I've noticed that the word anxiety gets thrown around so much. And all of a sudden, 90% of the population has anxiety. When did that change? I mean, when I was growing up, nobody had anxiety. Maybe it was misdiagnosed, or, you know, we didn't talk about it, you know, because certainly it was there, right? Everybody had it. But now all of a sudden it's a tagline, you know, and everybody has anxiety. And, you know, one of the great descriptions that I've read about anxiety is that it's really about anticipating what's coming. It hasn't happened yet. You're anxious about what could come. So we spend all this time and energy on what could happen, and gosh, what if it doesn't happen? Then we wasted all that energy on the possibility of the future, right? Nobody knows what the future is going to bring. You know, we're all here today. We're all, you know, reasonably healthy, I think. And, you know, that could change tomorrow, but why worry about it? Why not just spend your day with the body that you have and the mind that you have and enjoy it?
So is that mindset that you're just explaining something you developed over years, or is there a point you wished to have had earlier, you know, this kind of realization with anxiety now? Well, and how far has it been different when you were younger?
Well, when I was younger, I was a busy mom. You know, I had 2 kids and a niece that I took care of, and, you know, we were pretty busy running back and forth. I don't think there was a lot of available time to be anxious. It's like, who's getting picked up from school, and, you know, who's making dinner and who's on second. So I never really had the available space to kind of say, got a little anxiety issue going on. I'm checking out right now. So, you know, I think the ability to find that quiet space in your life is a gift. And it's a gift that comes through the practice of yoga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so talking about yoga, and also the aspect not only about aging, but healthy aging. And as Holly explained already, many people have concerns. It's not so much only about how do I look, but especially when mobility decreases and I cannot do the things I was able to do some time before. So how can yoga practically really help? By what means to keep going, to maintain your physical functions?
I think that, you know, having the strength in your legs and your glutes will, you know, and even your feet and ankles, right? Those are so important, because if you let your legs get weak and your glutes, you know, start to shrink, then the standing up, sitting down, and walking through daily life become a task, right? Instead of a joy. And we need to be able to stand up and, you know, even if it's to walk to the refrigerator and then come back and sit back down, right? Or be able to walk to the car, be able to push ourselves through the grocery store, you know, or do our daily tasks. I think when we lose the strength to do those daily tasks, and then we ask other people to do them for us, then we start to lose mobility, because we shut down the area of the brain that says, I can still do it. And, you know, at some point that might come for us, but fight it off as long as you possibly can. I can't remember who said this task. I think it was Clint Eastwood, but I could be wrong. Every day, don't let the old guy in. Don't do it. You know, every day that you can get up and do something, do it. Be vital, be active, even if you have to tell yourself, you know, this doesn't feel so great, but tomorrow maybe it'll feel better because you did it today. You know, the sedentary life doesn't go anywhere. It goes nowhere but downhill.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's a great aspect. But there are some people who might not have been that active in their lives until they realize, now it's all about yoga or moving, and they read it in the magazine or hear about it, but they're maybe too concerned or don't know really how to start it. So what would you recommend? What is there an age limit for yoga to
no, I don't
come to
believe there's,
classes?
I don't believe there's any age limit, and we take everybody here, right? We have this beautiful platform. You can't get on the floor. You can sit on the platform. You know, you can roll in and off the platform. You know, the beauty of Iyengar yoga is that we have all this yoga furniture around that we can help people get into different, you know, different asanas, or just give them some stability until they get the strength to be able to stand on their own 2 feet.
So
You
what
know,
props are we using there?
Well, we could use, you know, we use the trestle, we use the trestle, we use the rope wall, we use chairs. We're sitting in them now, but they're, you know, they have many components to a chair that, you know, that we can use to help steady people. And little by little, and shockingly, it doesn't take that long. You know, in 6 weeks' time, your physical body, if you practice 2 or 3 times a week, 20 minutes, it changes. It changes quickly. It doesn't take forever. It's, you know, yes, you can practice forever, but it doesn't take very long to see results.
So what is if people have some chronic issues and they are concerned about that?
Yeah. Everybody has, I mean, nobody's getting out of this for free. So, you know, everybody's going to have some kind of thing that come for us. And, you know, it's how we manage it. You know, are you going to let it take you down? I mean, certainly we've had people that have had knee replacements, hip replacements, spinal fusions. Everybody practices, you know, shoulder issues. You know, I've got an ongoing shoulder issue myself. And, you know, you have to work around it, but that's the beauty of Iyengar yoga, is that we teach you how to work around it. We teach you how to improve it, you know, instead of just saying, well, keep doing it and eventually it will come. Well, you know, eventually with misalignment and taxing a joint on one side or the other, it's not going to come. You know, you will risk some injurious behavior, but, you know, that's why you need a trained Iyengar yoga teacher.
So what kind of practice is your recommendation for older people? Because you mentioned already how your practice has changed, but when people maybe are concerned about, oh, it's too rigorous or I cannot do it. So
yeah, and I think that, you know, lots of people term yoga or think that yoga is about, you know, coming in and grabbing a bolster and lying on the floor. Well, that's not really going to get you very far. Sure, we take time for that, but, you know, you have to move a little bit. You have to do. But, you know, if you've ever taken, you know, I teach 2 classes on Sunday. We taught, you know, the more advanced class in the morning and then a second class. And I usually keep them the same. They're pretty much the same, asana-wise. I just do a more adaptive version in the second class. But the syllabus or the asanas that I teach are pretty much the same. So, you know, if we're doing back bends in the early class, we're doing them in the second class. And we just do them in a more supported way. And I just move a little bit slower in it. Or, you know, we have the Wednesday class where, you know, we call it the super senior class, or the, you know, the one that's even slower than that. So there's always, you know, a way to fit in and come to class.
So what have you observed with also older students that you have been teaching about their courage, change in attitude, change in health? What are your experiences with?
Well, I think it's interesting because you don't really realize it's happening to you. You don't really realize that you're getting, you know, more capable, or there's more freedom in movement. And, you know, I think one of my students, who happens to be on the screen here, liken this to a, you know, you're going out with some friends for dinner, right? You pop out of the car, you shut the door, and you walk into the restaurant. And then you look back, and there's 4 or 5 people that are struggling in the parking lot to get to the restaurant. And you're like, wait, what happened? What happened on your way to the restaurant, you know? And it's just that you don't realize that through your practice, you know, you got up, you got out of the car, you shut the door, and you walked in. And then you're like, well, what's wrong, people? You know, because they're not, you know, they had to think about, I got to think about getting out of the car. I got to think about opening the door. I got to think about how hard it is to shift my legs over and then stand up. So, we work on balance in class. We work on creating strength in your legs so that, again, the ultimate freedom being, you don't have to think about it. You turn around, you get out of the car, you shut the door, you lock it, you walk into where you need to go. It's a very different thing than having to, stand on the back of your car, catch your breath, hope that somebody has a trolley there that you can use in the parking lot as a walker to go into the grocery store and get your groceries. It's a state of affairs that you should avoid.
So what kind of precautions should older students take?
Well, again, I think you need to be in a class where you're supported. You're supported by teaching. You're supported by the teachings. And that's not to say people don't struggle in class. Everybody struggles in class. But you have to be willing to, how do we say it? Make an ugly asana and then grow it. Who cares? Who cares what it looks like? The care is that you're here, that you're moving through it, and that you're learning something, and that you are striving to get better, to find that ultimate freedom in movement.
Mm-hmm. So there are so many different yoga styles out there for many different reasons. So how far has Iyengar Yoga prepared you as a teacher to teach all ages? There are also children classes, there are what we call regular classes, and of course for older people. But what is the difference, what you take out from your teacher training, and how far have you been prepared? You're also a certified therapist. So therapeutic yoga, how would you describe that, just to learn what is different with Iyengar Yoga and where people might see a chance to join?
So yoga therapeutics is very different than a yoga class. So with yoga therapeutics, it's more of a tailored program individually that's worked through a sequence, and ideally, 6 weeks time, that person has moved from, a super severe back issue, let's call, that's, one of the things that happens, to be able to attend a regular class. Yoga therapeutics isn't mean to keep you in that therapy situation forever, but if you're recovering from surgery, or you have a physical limitation that needs one-on-one care, then yoga therapeutics is a great way to go. But yoga therapeutics comes from regular yoga. It's not a different Trikonasana. It's Trikonasana, but it's a supported Trikonasana. And it's taught in a way that you learn how to take care of yourself in class, after a certain period of time. Is that what you meant? Yeah, okay.
So if somebody has a kind of bigger health issue and the doctor is still okay to show up for yoga, the person could just check in with you and see what is the best way to get an idea about.
I think one of the misconceptions, especially in the medical field, is that when you say you're going to yoga, they assume that all yoga is the same. And, I encourage students when they, ask their doctor if they can, can I start a yoga practice, is that they should say, can I start an Iyengar yoga practice? Because it's different. It's different. We're not, taken to the practice slowly. It takes a long time to become an Iyengar yoga teacher. And you have to learn certain skills, and, those skills are tested. And you have to learn, the powers of observation of a teacher are very different when you actually have to look, and somebody has to be in an asana for a while, and you have to quickly calculate, how can I help them? How can it change? And what can I do for them?
So, and how far has your eagle eye changed over the years? So, Holly, just for information again, is a senior Iyengar yoga teacher. So that took quite some years to get to that level of certification, besides teaching that many classes. So how has your perspective changed?
It's just over time, over time you develop that skill, and then you also develop the skill of how can I affect, what's the one thing that I can do to affect this, as opposed to, 23 things, right? You're going to pick the one thing that's going to have the overall best effect, and then, modify that.
So do you have to also still do training to keep your
Training
certification?
Yes. Iyengar yoga teachers have continuing education credits that they have to pursue every year. I think it's, 25 hours. to do 25 hours continuing education every year. And then every 2 years, I have to recertify the Iyengar yoga therapist certification for 3 years. Can't remember. So it's ongoing. It's a lifetime of study, and it's a lifetime of adaptation, you know, but how does that saying go? I'm too old to die young now. So I got to share what I have.
So here with Iyengar Yoga of the Coachella Valley, we offer various yoga classes during the week and also yoga for older adults. We have a breast health class for women. We have a community class. So it's definitely our goal to attract people just to give it a try, whereas they usually would think, oh, it's too expensive, because all our classes are for free, by the way. And also maybe they would not even walk into a yoga studio because they think it's only for, you know, slim ladies or any of these
bendy people
kind of prejudice. So therefore, if you are interested, so please come and join us for one of these classes. But another big aspect is, of course, well, and very often discussed in these days, besides the physical part, but that is mental health. And mental health is also just a thrown in word where we can interpret a lot into it. So how do you relate yoga, and also in this case, of course, Iyengar yoga, to mental health, not only the physical part for bad knees and bad shoulders?
Yeah, I think movement helps brain health. I think keeping the juices flowing, so to speak. I think inversions help brain flow. But just being able to get out, open your chest, you know, depression, you can see somebody that's calculating depression or walking that line when they're walking down the road, right? You can see it. You know, they're looking down, they're very quiet, you know, maybe their chest is collapsed. You know, get them to open their chest and, you know, see, feel, believe that they can be vital. I think depression comes when people don't think that they're vital or important. And, you know, I think a physical practice of yoga makes you feel stronger, gets the systems of your body flowing, gets the waste matter out, clear your brain. Nobody ever, well, maybe I'm not going to say nobody. Very, very, very few people have ever left a yoga class going, you know, I really wished I would have stayed home. Very few, right? You can play golf and go, well, I should have stayed home for that one. Or, you know, done any number of other things. You know, that movie wasn't worth getting out of the house for. But it's not very often that somebody says, you know, I really wished I would have stayed in bed instead of gone to a yoga class. So, you know, you have to remember that part, you know, how good it makes you feel. Even though it's a struggle to get there, get to class. Get to class. You don't have the money, we have free classes. You need some support, we've got support, you know. I mean, the medical community out there has no idea really what we do. So, you know, maybe we should educate them as well.
What, you know, you talked about, now let's talk about anxiety. So how is, I mean, depression is one aspect, but what about, for example, anxiety? So people are anxious, or maybe the Iyengar yoga method, that's also not a secret. It's known as being vigorous and maybe sometimes also quite strict. And people think about this, no, it's too strict. I want to, you know, peace kind of. And I have learned, and you too, that, you know, even in Shavasana, when the instructions are a little bit more firm, the relaxation process is even better because people just do it. So what is your experience with that? If people are too, you know, anxious to do something?
I think people do it, and our method in telling people how to do things, it leaves off the what am I going to do now? It's like the mystery in class when you know, when you say, okay, do the headstand of your choice. Now people got to choose. Which one do I want to do? I want to go to the wall. Do I feel like I should be in the center of the room? I'm going to do rope shirshasana. I'm going to take the sling. And you can just see, if you're sitting in one place, that decision, having to make that decision takes immediately you out of your practice. It takes you off your mat. You're immediately out of your practice because you're not being, staying with the stream of teaching. And anxiety is easy to see in a class in the same way that, the fingers don't settle, the feet don't settle. There's always some movement going on, or adjusting or fixing, or, just learn to be quiet. In the end of life for Guruji, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the pictures, but, well, maybe you have, but he's laid out on the floor and you see the giant plate weights, right? Giant plate weights on your thighs. We never weight the abdomen. Giant plate weights on the thighs, shoulders. It's to create a sense of quietness, right? That there's that feeling that you're covered, that you're blanketed, that you can let go and release this toxic energy, that just needs to get out. For some people, it just needs to get out, and I've demonstrated many times in class in Tadasana, living in the future, right? We're living in the future. We're leaning on the toes. Eyes are bugged out. It's like, I'm ready for the next thing to come. Well, how about if you just be where you are? How about if you just enjoy where you are for a moment? Instead of, last year I could do this. Then all of a sudden you're going backwards, right? And last year I could push up into Urdhva Dhanurasana. What happened? Sometimes it's my fault. People say, that's your fault. You didn't teach it enough this year. And that's why I couldn't get up. So, I'm moving on. I did Urdhva Dhanurasana. I'm ready to move on to Dvipada Viparita Dandasana or Rajakapadasana. I'm ready to move on. So are you living in the future? Or are you living in the moment? Or are you living in the past? And when you've got that stream of teaching, people stay with it. And that's what helps teach them to be in the moment, my opinion.
So you have been multiple times to India, to the institute in Pune. And of course, Guruji was already older, much older when you started, basically, because he had a long life. He passed away with, I think, 95. So what was your take of your Pune visits, just to see people going there to class, which I know from my own experience are not only the young and flexible ones, but also a lot of older people. So what was your take out of that at the beginning? Did you expect that there were so many older people?
I would say I was absolutely terrified. I walked into the institute, I was absolutely terrified. I walked over, there was 3 of us that went, and then we were from Santa Cruz, and we kind of toddled our way over there, and we signed up for classes, and it's like, is he going to be in the room? Is he not going to be in the room? What's going to happen? What if he calls me out on my practice, or something like that? And we walked to the front entrance, and I saw his shoes sitting on the step, and I went, okay, off we go, and I had to walk up the steps and into the room, and you just had to be there, and we were supposed to have 8 years practice before we went, and the parameters were 8 years of practice, 10 minutes Shirshasana in the center of the room, and then we did the variations. So you had to be able to hold Shirshasana 10 minutes and then be able to do variations after that, 20 minutes Sarvangasana, and be able to push up into Urdhva Dhanurasana and also Adho Mukha Vrikshasana. Right, so there were parameters then that aren't necessarily held to today. It's a little more open, and they're accepting more younger people because it's trying to spread the word, so to speak. But the medical classes were something I always observed, and as soon as I could help in the medical classes, I did. And we used to sit in the back and try to guess what the condition was, because they didn't tell you what the condition was. So you'd have to sit there and go, I think he's got a bad heart. Or, oh, that person has MS, so the keen eye, right? The teachings of that were to, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Why are they doing certain things that they're doing? So, and in use of the props in the medical classes was, more about creating a shape than having everybody do the same thing. So I would go back to, I was absolutely terrified, but at the end of the month, it was an invaluable experience. Socially, being away from home that long time, it was 6 weeks back then because it took you a while to get there. They expected you to stay for a month. And then, there was some shopping to be had afterwards. So you were there for a good long while. at the joy of not having to think about anything else but practicing and eating was such a blessing. You didn't have to get up in the morning, worry about nothing. You got up, you ate something, you went to practice. You ate something else, you went back to practice. Then you ate something else, and then you either went back to practice or observed the medical class, or you went home. I mean, the freedom in just doing that was just super joy.
Mm-hmm. Is there something you remember now as you're getting older that you learned, and now it comes back to your memory and says, okay, let me practice this way now? For example, also what Gita taught, Gita Iyengar, the daughter of Vikas Iyengar, who was very active also for women especially, but even more, seeing the whole person, the entire person, especially also older people. So is there anything in particular you remember?
Gita was the one that really ran the medical classes. Guruji was there, but Gita was the one that, really ran the sequences and ran the medical classes. But she was also the first one that adapted practice for women. So I would say Gita was my teacher more than Guruji was my teacher, because she was the one that was actively teaching when I was there. So, as far as the medical classes went, I mean, she was the one that dictated the sequences and the setups and, how to do. And then, we'd move on from there. So, but her teaching was always very dynamic and very interesting, and her linking and, cues were fabulous. We're going to have a practice with Gita here in the studio soon.
So you are the original founder of IYCCV, which has been celebrated its 5th anniversary just a week ago. We had a nice party. And it has, of course, evolved already in, has been growing. So talking about aging, also the point of, social contact. So how can IYCCV help, especially older people, to connect?
Well, I think just having the available space to come to class with your peers is something that's, really important, be it, the breast health class or the aged class or the, yoga for addiction and recovery, all of those classes, to be surrounded by people that are in the same boat or in the same situation as you're in, creates a sense of friendliness, and it just feels safer to be in a space like that. Regular class is great, but creating a sense of community with like individuals, so to speak, that have kind of been through the same thing is really quite nice. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor at 36 or 36, I think I was diagnosed. So I've been a long-term cancer survivor, and I think having a mentorship with other people that are going through it is really an important service to offer the community. So.
Yeah, I mean, IYCCV is grateful that it's placed here at Iyengar Yoga Palm Desert location, basically, so that it's a safe space, and safe in terms of also, I think in these days, at home there's always something to do or distraction. So here you have to come, and then you really can focus on the practice. But what is it? People say, oh yeah, I just want to do it from home in these days with Zoom. What's your recommendation, especially for older people who have not really that well established practice?
I think you're missing out on something. I think coming to class and seeing other people in class live and in person, and being able to see the teacher live and in person, it's a benefit. But it doesn't have to be every day. I mean, you can certainly come to a couple classes a week and Zoom the rest. The genesis of IYCCV was COVID. And everybody being locked in their house during COVID, and how can we help the community survive this, with mental health, right? Because we're all locked in our houses with, nobody to talk to. And, we started the Zoom program, and I'd turn it on a half an hour early just so we could all talk to each other, and at least have some sense of community that way when we're all stuck at home. So, that was the genesis of it. How can I offer something to the community to keep us together while we couldn't really practice together? So, and then it's just kind of blossomed from there.
Yeah, and it's good to have options in these days that can be mixed or according to needs. I mean, we have also people who practiced and then moved away and are still joining, and others are once in a while joining here in the room. So another aspect is a little bit, and some people might be interested, the philosophical part. For example, we have Patanjali, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And out of curiosity, I was also researching for what does Patanjali or any of the wise persons that are related to yoga say about aging. And I found, like in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, aging is understood as a part of a deeper cycle tied to mind, karma, and the identification of the body. Patanjali would say aging happens to the body, not to who you truly are. The real problem isn't aging, it's believing that you are the thing that ages.
The aged, yeah.
So what is your take on that?
I think that's a reference to the soul, right? In yoga, we don't believe that the soul dies, right? It's that it moves on to the next, to the next carrier, the next body, so to speak. So the evolution of our human nature, our human mind, is to get through all the junk that we put on ourselves that we don't want to necessarily carry on to the next life, right? Some people, they grow up thinking they can't do a certain thing or be physical in a certain way, and they carry that through their whole life. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not an exerciser person, or I'm not a this kind of person, or I'm not, and so we have to work through those things. We sort of burn through them, and then maybe we get a little bit of ultimate bliss, right? Kaivalya, ultimate freedom, to move on to the next vehicle and start our life instead of where we were, maybe where we progressed to. So I think it's just the evolution of the soul and kind of the stripping of the can and can't do's that we want to move forward with.
So I, by intention, mentioned this philosophical aspect, because yoga, of course, it's a science, it's an art, and it's a philosophy. But people think sometimes to intellectually maybe, the philosophy and, liberated from what? So how do you incorporate philosophy into your practice or into the teachings, basically, that it makes sense and is more graspable if there is a point?
I think it depends on the point in time. I kind of try to throw some terms in here and there. But the Yoga Sutras, much like the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible, it's the human condition. It's all just, how the human condition relates, in working through life. So they're written a little bit differently, but the essence of it is is the same.
So could you say practicality wins? Just do it.
yeah. Be a good neighbor. Yeah, do it. So there's I think we learn, yoga gives us the space to not be so reactionary, I think. I think it gives us that moment between observing something and reacting to it. We have that space to decide how we want to react to it. When something comes over you and you recognize that, you're getting a little fire inside, maybe your practice gives you a few moments to be able to settle yourself and go, I'm not going to react that way. This isn't about me. This is about this person having a bad day or a good day. And let it, be the middle ground. You don't have to scale it up or scale it down. And I think yoga gives us that space to be able to be quiet enough to make good decisions.
Yeah, so thank you, first of all. And before we move on to the question and answer part, I would like to read two quotes that I found very inspiring about aging. And the first one is from Albert Einstein. And he said, "Do not grow old, no matter how long you live. Never cease to stand like curious children before the great mystery into which we are born in."
Exactly. Don't let the old guy in.
And number two, from a completely different person, Miss Coco Chanel, said, "You can be gorgeous at 30, charming at 40, and irresistible for the rest of your life."
Yep. Yeah. I think there's a glow that happens for people that have a practice. And I think other people recognize it. They don't necessarily know what it is, but they know that there's something, there's some glow about you that is attractive.
Yeah, thank you. So what questions do you have? So those on the screen, you can just unmute and ask your questions. Then Holly can answer these. And of course, we have people in the room and would like to include them as well. So if you have a question, then raise your hand and then we can channel that with those who are on the screen. Any questions?
That's when you know you did an okay job when there's no questions. Nobody has a question for me? Did I answer? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Guess who has a question?
Why do you think maybe you talk a little bit about this, but it's old practice?
No, I don't think so. I think your practice changes. I think that, we observe that. We observe that in Iyengar yoga because our guru did get old and he aged gracefully. And, the practice turned into a shavasana practice for death, right? You're practicing being still enough to let go. I really think people can choose. People have the power to choose when is the time to go. And, likewise, if you've been around very many people that are, preparing to go, some of them hold on. They have the power to hold on. And other people go, I'm okay. There's a quietness within them and they can settle and let go. And I think that's what Guruji was practicing. Did he want to die? Probably not. Does anybody want to die? I don't know. But, I think we have the strength within us to make that decision. So you practice it. Mm-hmm.
All right. The next question. Ina?
Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. Here, we'll play past the mic.
Yeah.
New method.
There is a lot of different type of yoga, like Hogarth already mentioned before. And why you recommend exact Iyengar method? What's the difference between some others methods?
For me?
No,
Oh. Yeah.
for
Well,
Asian.
I've let's see. When I first started doing yoga in Santa Cruz, let's see, I did a little bit of vinyasa yoga, and then I did a little bit of Bikram yoga, and then I did those after my first Iyengar yoga class. My first Iyengar yoga teacher was Kofi Busia. I just happened to walk into the class, and that's who the teacher was. I had no idea who he was. I had no idea of his credentials. I just happened to fall into that. And then I did the other types of yoga because that's what everybody else was doing, right? It was like, oh, we're all doing vinyasa. Okay. Then I was like, well, this isn't going anywhere for me. And then I was like, let's try Bikram. Bikram was new in the thing, and I thought I was going to die in there, but I stuck with it for, a couple of weeks, and I went, yeah, this isn't doing it for me either. So then I went back to Iyengar yoga, and I never really left. I always enjoyed that there was a lineage. I always enjoyed that there was literature. Guruji was a prolific writer. And if you wanted to know something, you could learn it, because there was plenty of literature out there to read and to learn. So, and I don't think the learning ever really stops. The people that come to class are, I don't want to say people that you practice on, but essentially they are, right? Because you're observing how they show up in their physical body, what their mental state is when they come to class, and you're teaching within those parameters. So that always attracted me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? The lady in the blue.
Hi, Holly.
Hi.
I have a question about aging athletes.
Yeah.
They somehow think, well, first of all, with age, the best of sports people either slow down or get injured
Mhm.
and are not able to do what they could do before.
Mhm.
And so they resort to certain kinds of exercises, but in their mind, they think they want to get back to
Yeah.
what they were.
Yeah.
So there's a difference between what they can do and what the reality for them will be.
And I think that is, different for everybody. I think it depends a little bit on how you've worn your joints, the alignment that you have in your body. I mean, if you wear, knock-kneed, bow-legged, elbows that, arms that won't straighten, all those things lead to the inevitable not being able to run, jump scenario, right? Which lets out a lot of sports. So if you have good, alignment in your joints, which yoga teaches us, then, you could practice. Maybe you're not going to play singles tennis. Maybe you're going to have to move to doubles tennis, or maybe you're only going to play once a week instead of 5 days a week. But, you find other things that are attractive, or you stay physically fit enough to be able to do that, But I think it depends on the, not everybody was born with a, anatomically correct set of joints, right? We're all born with, kind of how we come into this planet, and then, how we use our body throughout time, wears certain joints, or maybe something happens, maybe you get into an accident and all of a sudden, your back's a little bit different than it was before. Doesn't mean you can't practice. It means that you have to modify it a little bit. So, it depends on the physical, makeup of an individual. So I would say, Iyengar yoga gives us the ability to modify that practice. And, maybe you're not a trail runner anymore. Maybe you're a trail walker, but you're still out there. And you can run, quarter mile of it, or run. I came to yoga because I was a competitive trail runner. So, that's why I came, be able to lengthen out my stride and, save my spine and my knees and ankles. So, Patricia, you have a question for me.
I have a question, but I don't know if I can say it because my English spoken is not too good.
That's okay.
Okay. I understand very well you explain very well the physical benefit of yoga and also the mentally emotional. And what is your experience about the spiritual benefit that yoga provide or give people?
Yeah, I think, likening that, all of the texts are the same pretty much, the human condition. And, do you believe in a higher power or do you not? I mean, regardless of what that higher power is or how it looks to you, I think that spiritual component, that belief is an important aspect to life. I don't think we're not interconnected, and I don't think that we're not, part of a greater whole. So again, I would say for me, just to create a certain level of peace and have faith, a little bit of faith that, what's coming for you is something you're able to deal with. So I think, a practice gives you courage to look at that and to believe, because we've all been in places where we didn't, or where we had an opportunity to question that, and how do we come out the other side? So.
All right. Any other question from those who are joining us from the screen? Doesn't seem the case. So anyway, so for those who don't know us yet, where can you find us? So first of all, we have a homepage, IYCCV.org. We are available on Instagram, visible on Instagram, and we have some regular posts about classes and events that are coming up, such as these talks, because this was the first out of 4 this year. And that aspect of, social and loneliness and isolation. So these are the moments where people, or we would like people to invite coming to the studio and join us. And not only for the refreshments that those on the screen are unfortunately not having for the moment, but it's an option, and joining from the screen also is fine because it gives a connection. So we have created these events. Last year we showed 4 different movies about Iyengar. This year we have the talks. Next year, not yet established. As we learned, doesn't matter. We are in the present and this is the moment. So IYCCV provides all classes free of charge. So yes, we're accepting donations. We like having donations. So if you would like to help IYCCV, on the website, there is a way to donate. We have also several fundraisers coming up throughout the year, but the goal is still to encourage people to join classes free of charge. So to have not that hurdle, oh, I can afford it, yes or no, or it's too elite or whatever. We don't need any special clothing really, unless, except it should be comfortable that you can move. So please join us. Please tell your friends, especially those who are in doubt. Give them a chance, and showing up on a Saturday morning for the community class, there is no risk. You don't sign anything, no contract, no nothing. But it's really important in these days because these are the hesitations and mental barricades. So I'd like you to encourage, and thank you for joining today. We will upload this talk on our YouTube channel. This is the first time. Of course, we have to edit it a little bit or see how it comes through, but it's an availability that is also growing our YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed for it yet, please find us, IYCCV. And other than that, thank you, Holly, very much for your time. Holly donated her time today. And have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right.
IYCCV, right, Alex? IYCCV. Yeah, you will find that easily.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And I hope,
Thank you, Holger.
I hope that was helpful.
Yes, it was.
Keep
Absolutely.
going, keep doing. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Gracias,
you.
Monica.
Much
Bye.
appreciated. Bye.
Yeah, this is
No, but we had 2.
oh, the other one.
Okay, that's okay.
And you to me because I was